Eagles, good afternoon. Today we're going to go over linkage institutions. Okay, now, what is a linkage institution? Well, yes, it's government by the people. We know that, but we're a representative democracy, meaning we elect people who represent us, who then make all the decisions about actual laws and policy. So, yes, it is government by the people, but unless you're an actual elected official, you really don't get a say in the final, vote or a piece of legislation that's going through Congress. But we, as the people, still can link to government. Okay, we don't just sit around and do nothing. We can actually link to our government. So that is where the idea of linkage institutions comes into play. So there are 4 things that I want you guys to know with regard to linkage institutions. There's other ways that people can link to government for sure. But if you're not an actual elected official, these are the 4 things that we're going to focus on in this class. So political parties, interest groups, voting in elections, and of course the media. Now I've got this concept map here on the board. As you can see, there's a lot of, bubbles that we're going to fill in today, so I would recommend you follow along and draw this concept map as I go. Hopefully you can hear and see the whiteboard well. So in a nutshell, linkage institutions are the way we link to government. So to take it a step further, if there's something happening, if there's a bill that's going through committee, or if there's an election coming up and you really want to get involved, this is a way you can get involved. You can engage through your linkage institutions. If you want to help an individual get elected to office, then you can join a political party and help with their campaign, right? Or let's say that there's an issue in society that you feel strongly about and you want there to be some legislation passed. Well, whatever it may be, you can instead join an interest group that will try to lobby and influence public policy. Voting in elections. Probably the most simple linkage institution, and some would argue the most important. We should go and vote. And then, of course, the media, I would say, is kind of the outlier of the 4, but nonetheless, we engage with government politics through the media. We get our news about what's going on through the media. So we got to identify what the media does and how it works. And I want you to be educated students with regard to media as a linkage institution. So, again, as we go through this, I'd follow along, I'd draw this with me so that you can remember it. And in fact, this has been a good tool that we've used here at Skyline for AP Government. Students will kind of memorize and draw this. And if you can draw this from a blank sheet of paper, it will really benefit you, especially when you get in that AP test. If you start drawing a blank and you get a little nervous, if you can draw this, it will help kind of open up your mind and remember these linkage institutions. So let's start over here with political parties. Okay, now political parties and interest groups, these are your factions, right, that Madison talked about in Federalist Papers number 10. So they're going to have similarities, but they're also going to have differences. So I want you guys to be able to tell me the differences between political parties and interest groups. And as we go through this, you should be able to recognize some of those differences. So up here we have political parties as a linkage institution. Now the first thing I want you to know is, what is the main purpose of political parties? Okay, what is their main goal? And I'm really going to simplify it, and it is to win elections. Okay, so the main goal of a political party is to win elections. Once a political party works to win the election, they get their guy or gal into office, right? And then from there, they can control government. So by winning the election, they control government, and that is their main goal as a political party. So they're constantly going to be working to get their people into office so they can pass laws that they like. That's part of their ideology and their platform. So yes, I want you to know the main goal of a political party, but in addition to that, I want you to be able to tell me how political parties achieve their main goal of winning elections. There are several things in your notebook that we talked about, but the 3 I'm going to put on this concept map are nominate candidates, nominate candidates. Now, Nominating candidates is kind of their main thing. Right now, we'll talk about interest groups in a minute. And I just want to point out that one of the main differences between interest groups and political parties is that political parties are going to nominate candidates. Interest groups will support candidates, but they do not nominate them. And when a political party nominates a candidate, they got to nominate the right person. What does that mean? Well, yes, you want somebody qualified for the job. I get that. But remember, the main goal of the political party is to win an election, right? So yes, you want a qualified candidate, but you want somebody who's going to go out and get votes. So when you nominate that candidate, there's going to be some other things that you look for that will appeal to voters. Does this person appeal to a certain block of voters that they need to get? Does this person have access to resources that another candidate wouldn't have? So it's not necessarily the most qualified candidate, but it is somebody who's qualified and is a vote getter. They can go out and get those votes in order to, again, win the election. All right, so nominate candidates. The next one is fundraise. You got to fundraise. Now, I know we don't want money to be involved in our election. I get that. But the reality is campaigns are expensive. Billboards and hats and t-shirts and bumper stickers and yard signs and, of course, commercials that you see on YouTube or television or the radio. All of this costs money. If you want to hold a rally for your candidate to go speak to people, that costs money to set that up. So there's a lot of things going on in a campaign. And fundraising is going to be the primary job of the political party. So the more you can fundraise, the more likely you can put on a good campaign, which will help your candidate win the election. All right, well, the other one is inform supporters. Inform supporters. All right, so the average Joe walking down the street may not be fully engaged in what's going on, what the platform of the party is. So as the political party, you got to get out there and and let voters know what you stand for, what the issues are going to be that you will address if your candidate gets into office. You really want to inform supporters of what's going on and then motivate them to register and go vote on election day. So political parties, in order to win elections, need to nominate the right person, a vote getter. They need to fundraise so they can have a strong campaign, and then they need to inform supporters of what their platform is. Okay, now a little bit more about the actual dynamic of political parties. In the United States, we have a two-party system. Okay, so two-party system. All right. Now, do we have minor parties? Yes, we do have minor parties. So right here, I'm going to put minor parties. All right. We have this two-party system. What are the two parties? Are Republicans and Democrats. Are there third parties? Yes, there are minor parties. However, most people view a vote for a minor party as a wasted vote. Okay, now I'm going to put this in quotations because it's just a phrase we use. There's no such thing as a wasted vote. All votes are important, and votes for minor party candidates still have an impact on elections, even though the candidate doesn't win, because it can play the spoiler role, right? It can take away from one of the major parties, and that could be the difference. But anyway, we do have minor parties, like the Green Party or the Libertarian Party in the United States. They are there. They're allowed. There's lots of minor parties. The problem is they don't get a whole lot of voter support. They'll get 1, 2, 3% of the overall vote. But in the end, it's the Republicans and Democrats, the well-oiled machine of the Republicans and Democrats that get the majority of the support in the United States. So we do end up with a two-party system, and most people say, you know what, I would prefer to vote for third party, but I know that person's not going to win, so they're kind of forced to vote for either the Republican or Democrat. So they don't want to waste their vote on a third-party candidate, and I use that term waste in the sense that the third-party candidate really doesn't have a chance to win in the long run. Now, I want you to be able to identify to me that we have a two-party system, that we do have minor parties, but I want you to be able to tell me why this dynamic happens. Okay, two things. The single-member district system. What does that mean? In the United States, we have 435 districts. Our states are divided up. If you count them all up, it's 435 districts. The state of Utah will get a certain number of districts, California, and as we know, it's based off of a state's population. The more people you have, the more districts you will have in the House of Representatives. One person per district gets to go to Washington, D.C. and represent their constituency, not 2 or 3. It's not a multi-party system, meaning we have a two-party system, right? Republicans, Democrats. If it was a multi-party system, you would have a Republican and a Democrat go from whatever district to Washington, right, to represent their constituents. It doesn't work that way. Only one person gets to go, so it's either going to be the Republican or the Democrat. If you had a multi-party system, then these minor parties could possibly get a little voter support in districts because they know they have a chance of being one of those other people that gets to go to Washington and work on their constituents' behalf, but that's not how it is. With the single-member district system, only one person gets to go, and it creates a scenario where voters are kind of stuck in this arena where they got to pick either the Republican or the Democrat if they want their vote to count. Okay, also winner-take-all system of the Electoral College. It's very similar to single-member districts. Remember, in the Electoral College, most states do a winner-take-all system, meaning it doesn't matter how many votes you win by. Whoever gets the most votes in the states gets all of them, right? So if you have a state that has 6 electoral votes and the vote was kind of 52 to 48, well, that's kind of a tie, right? So it should split 3-3. Nope, that's not how it works. The 52 gets all 6. Or if you have a situation where it's 99-1, does the person who got 99 get bonus votes because they won by such a large margin of victory? No, they still get 6. That is why you see a scenario often, or not often, but sometimes, where the winner of the popular vote in the Electoral College may not win the Electoral College because their margin of victory in a big state like California may be huge, but in some of the other states they only win by a small margin. But remember, it's winner take all, so whoever gets the most popular votes gets all the electoral votes. And I don't mean to be repetitive. I know we've already covered that in class, but I just want to review. Winner take all system is another reason why we have a two-party system in the United States. Okay, so you should know the main goal of political parties. You should know how they achieve it. And you should know the dynamic of the two-party system in the United States. The last blank right up there, we're going to write broad view. Okay, broad view. What does that mean? It means that a political party will have a broad view of issues. Now, I'll just fill in the bubble next to it right now for interest groups, just so you can see the difference. Narrow view is what we'll put right here. Narrow. Sorry about my handwriting. Those are R's. Hopefully you can see this. Broad view versus narrow view. And what I mean by that is a political party has to have an opinion about all issues, whether it's healthcare, foreign policy, abortion, immigration, whatever. A political party will have a broad view of topics. Interest groups are going to be a little different. They care about their one topic, right? If I were to take the National Education Association, that is an interest group that's focused on education. That's their narrow focus. If I take the National Rifle Association, right, that's an interest group focused on guns, Second Amendment, right? So that's their narrow view. If I use Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, they're focused on drinking and driving. So they're going to have a narrow view of issues, whereas political parties are going to have a broad view. Okay, now, like political parties winning elections as the main goal, interest groups are going to also have their main goal. So, the primary goal of interest groups is to influence public policy. Okay, influence public policy. That is the main goal of interest groups. Different than political parties, right? Political parties are there to win elections and control government. Interest groups don't necessarily care who's in office as long as they do what they want. If a politician is in office that's going to put forth policies or laws, vote for certain things that they like and they can influence public policy, that makes the interest groups happy. So interest groups' main goal is to influence public policy. Now again, just like political parties, I want you to be able to tell me the main goal and how they achieve it. Let's start over here with lobbying. Okay, lobbying. And this is probably the main one that you can remember, the easiest one. As far as a linkage institution, interest groups influence public policy, how do they do that? They lobby. They lobby members of Congress. They apply. What is lobbying? Lobbying is applying pressure to get what they want. How do you lobby? You donate to their campaign. You run television commercials either for or against an issue or even a politician. You persuade through grassroots movements, right? So an interest group wants to influence public policy by lobbying, and I want to get more specific right here. I mentioned campaign money, so I'm going to put PACs right here, political action committees. This is the entity that you will donate money to in order to help with campaigns. Campaigns, did I spell that right? No, I did not. Campaigns. Where's the G? How embarrassing. At least I'm not being filmed right now. Wait, I am. Oh, I did it right. Okay, campaigns. Again, sorry about my handwriting. Okay. Interest groups influence public policy by lobbying. One way to do it is to donate money to a political action committee, which will then be used to fund a candidate's campaign. Now remember, interest groups aren't the ones that nominate the candidate. That's the political party. But they're the ones that can support a candidate, and the way they support them is by giving them money through their, donate to their political action committee. And I won't go over super PACs in this particular presentation, and I won't go over Citizens United and the Bipartisan Campaign Act, but hopefully you're all very familiar with the things I just said. But essentially, influence public policy by putting money into PACs, helping their campaigns, and when they get elected, now you, as an interest group, have access to that politician in office. You have access to legislators, and then you can influence them to give, put in public policy that you like, that your interest group is fighting for. Okay, I mentioned issue ads a minute ago. So the media can be a tool used by interest groups, and I use the words issue ads right here. What's an issue ad? Okay. You've all seen issue ads, you just don't know what you're watching. Where you have a television commercial that's taking an issue in society, and the interest group will run that commercial that's either for or against the issue, or in the situation of a campaign, for or against a candidate, right? That is a use of the media to apply pressure running an issue ad. Okay, grassroots movements is the other one I want to highlight with how you lobby. That's lobbying on the lowest level, grassroots, right? What are some examples? I put here town hall meetings. Okay, I could have put door-to-door campaigning. I could put voter registration drive. So when an interest group wants to influence public policy, they may have a voter drive, or they may hold a town hall meeting, or they may go door-to-door to talk about the issues. These are all actions, grassroots movements. Okay? All right, recap. Interest groups have a narrow view of things compared with political parties who have a broad view. The primary goal of an interest group is to influence public policy, and the methods in which interest groups use to influence public policy is lobbying, donating money to campaigns to help their folks they support get elected, using the media as a tool to apply pressure through something like an issue ad, and then grassroots movements, working at the lowest level to apply pressure to get their policies that they favor in place. Okay, let's move to voting. Now, in my opinion, this is the simplest linkage institution, and this is one that I think can be easy in terms of effort. You really got to be politically active to engage in these two ones up here. I mean, if you want to really get into it without being an elected official, political party is the way to go, but there's some work involved. Same with interest group. Sometimes there's like a fee to be part of the group. You pay a membership due, and there's different kinds of interest groups. There's economic interest groups like a labor union, right? But there's also interest groups that support a cause. So you have your labor union side of the interest group, but you also have your support a cause side for an interest group, like an environmental group that's trying to protect the environment. But if you're using the American Medical Association, or if you have a different kind of labor union, those are the other interest groups. But they both function the same way in that they want to influence public policy. Okay, sorry, I did a little extra on the top. Let's go down to the bottom. Voting. Voting's, I think, a simple way to link to government. Obviously, you need to get out and vote for the candidate in order for you to link to government. Only two things I really want to focus on this: the types of voting and voting predictors. Okay, so types of voting. There is what's known as split ticket, straight ticket, and then caucus voting. Okay, now, split ticket. If you're a moderate or an independent voter, this is probably where you're going to fall. You go to the voting booth and you're like, oh, I really like this Republican for this office. Oh, I'm down with this Democrat for this office. Oh, hey, I'm going to go independent, the Green Party right here, right? So you're going to split your ticket up between multiple candidates in various political parties. Right? That's split ticket voting. Straight ticket. I think it's self-explanatory. You walk in, you're a hardcore Republican, and you're like, Republican, click the box, it fills in the ballot for you, and off you go, right? Straight ticket. You're going to vote straight. Party, yes, you still care who the candidates are, but in some cases, no. You're just like, I don't know anything about you. I just know you got the little elephant next to your name, GOP, I'm voting for it straight away, right? Or if you're a hardcore liberal, you're down with the Democrat Party, you walk in, you don't even look at the names, you're just Democrat, 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 all the way down. You are voting straight ticket. Caucus voting, I would describe it as old school. It's still around, don't get me wrong, caucus voting is still around, but there's been a move toward direct primaries in our nomination process. But caucuses are still around. I want this to be very straightforward for you guys. This is a meeting of party members. Okay, so if you're going to vote through a caucus system, you as a political party will meet, and it's kind of like a group voting, where as the party you can decide who your candidate is. We've moved away from the group meeting caucus voting nationwide, more direct primaries than there used to be. And as a result of moving from caucus voting to direct primaries, candidates aren't really controlled by the political party as much as they used to be. It's more of a candidate-centered campaign situation. But those are your three types of votings that I want you to be aware of. Now, next thing we need to know is voting predictors. I want you guys to be able to predict how people will vote. Here are your voting predictors. All right, so we're going to go age, race, religion, education, income, party, and gender. I missed gender. Gender. Okay. So what do I want you to know with voting predictors? Okay, so I want you to be able to, based off of somebody's age, based off of somebody's gender or race or education, you should be able to predict based off statistics how they will vote. Now, obviously, this isn't universal. I mean, obviously, there are exceptions to the rule. This is just all stats, is all it is. So it's predictors. Okay, so some predictors can predict if you'll vote, whether you'll be politically active, and then some predictors can predict how you will vote. Right? Okay, so let's start with age. Older voters tend to vote more than younger voters. Okay, so if you get an AP test question that says Susan is 22 and Billy is 55, which one's more likely to vote? It's going to be Billy, right? He's older. So statistically, that doesn't mean that Susie won't, vote. It's just statistically, age is going to lead to more likely to vote. Race. So, statistically speaking, minorities tend to vote Democrat. Okay, now that doesn't mean that minorities don't vote Republican. They do, but in terms of the overall numbers, you're going to see a majority in terms of race vote Democrat on the minority side. Religion, that tends to favor the Republican side, right? So Christianity has been part of the Republican Party platform for many years. So those who are highly religious, and I'll point out Christianity in this particular example, they have a tendency to vote with the GOP. That doesn't mean there aren't religious Democrats, right? That's not what that means, but just statistically speaking, highly religious folks tend to vote on the Republican side. Education, this is one that predicts if you will vote, right? These ones were how, these ones are if. I probably should have grouped them together, my bad. But in terms of education, those who have more education are more likely to be politically active and are more likely to vote. So the way they do these statistics, they go, high school, diploma, college, and then grad school, all that, right? The more education you have completed, the more likely you're going to be politically active. Statistically speaking, income is another if. The more income you have, the more likely you're going to vote. I call it the rule of the Mo, right? The more age you got, the more education you got, and the more income you got, the more likely you are to vote, right? You have more skin in the game, so to speak, when you got more money. So you're more likely to vote. Gender, again, I should have grouped these together, my bad. Gender is a predictor more of how? Gender. There is a gender gap. Men are somewhat more likely. It's not a huge gender gap, and it will fluctuate, right? But men are somewhat more likely to vote Republican, and women somewhat more likely to vote Democrat. And again, there's obviously exceptions to the rules, and this will obviously fluctuate from election to election. This is the key right here, though, guys. Political party, right? Political party. Political party is the number one predictor in how somebody will vote. And you're probably going, well, yeah, bro, what are you going to tell me next? The sky is blue or the grass is green? Like, no duh, parties, like Democrats are going to vote Democrat. I know, I get it, it's obvious, but this just seems to pop up on the AP test, right? How are people going to vote? Well, they're going to vote with their party. Well, no duh, but okay, it's on there. Partisanship or political party is the number one predictor of how somebody will vote, okay? All right, hopefully you can read my handwriting. Let's move over to our last linkage institution, which is a little different than the other ones, media. Now again, you should know the primary goal of political parties, winning elections. Primary goal of interest groups, influence public policy. Primary goal of the media is to influence the public agenda. Eagles, this is the key word, agenda, different than policy, right? Agenda isn't tangible compared to a policy, right? A policy or a law, that's what interest groups are trying to influence. The media, they're there to make money a lot of the times, right? The media is an entity it's not part of government. It's got an agenda, it's trying to follow. So influencing the public agenda is the main goal of the media. Now, a couple things I want you to be aware of with the media. In AP Government, we talk a little bit about media bias. I just want to keep this simple. You have conservative media outlets, right? And I'm just putting cons and libs, right? You can abbreviate it. And you're going to have some liberal media outlets, okay? So in this class, we talk about a political echo chamber. And what that means is voters tend to associate certain kinds of media that follow their ideology, right? So if you are a far-right conservative, you're really going to engage with a lot of your conservative media outlets. If you're a far-left liberal, you're going to engage with the liberal media outlets. And certain media outlets can have a bias toward an ideology or a political party. So as you consume your media, be aware of that, and you don't want to get stuck in a political echo chamber where you only engage in media outlets that just reaffirm your bias, your confirmation bias, right? oftentimes voters get stuck in this political echo chamber and they fail to recognize the other side, and they fail to engage in the marketplace of ideas, if you will, because they're caught in their own political confirmation bias by only engaging in certain media outlets. Okay, so we just want to be aware of that issue. Now, back to influencing the public agenda. There's a couple things I want you to write. First, gatekeeping. Gatekeeping. The media, over time, has been an important part of our government, an important entity, if you will, to gatekeep. What does that mean? It means keeping politicians honest, right? We could talk about the Watergate situation where the media had a role to play in uncovering that. Now, in American history, we talk about this in other areas, but essentially, the media will influence the public agenda by gatekeeping. In essence, they're going to push forth their issues. They can really filter and frame certain issues, right? They decide which issues are going to be reported. Now, sometimes this can be abused because they can filter and frame certain issues to go with their objective. But a lot of the times it can be good to keep politicians as a, kind of like a check and balance. Like, hey, let's be honest, they're out there to gatekeep, decide the issues, and to report. Now, let's move right here. This is horse race journalism. Okay, we'll write horse race journalism. What is this? Okay, who's winning is what I put right here. Okay, horse race journalism, who's winning? That's what they're reporting on. In an election year, dude, it's like all you ever hear about as soon as you turn on the TV or whatever is who's winning in the polls. I mean, there could be a major policy situation happening in Congress or the president and the executive branch, but all you're hearing about in the media is who's up in the polls today. We're 45 days away from election, and so is winning by 3 points. Yeehaw, right? All they're doing is they're just keeping track of which candidate is where, and I don't know, maybe my annoyance with it is coming out in this lecture, but it just seems a little bit like, okay, we get it, the polls, all right, but that's what they're doing. They're telling the public who's winning in the polls, who's the horse that's ahead right now, who's winning. Horse race journalism. There's one final blank here. We're going to talk about this with the executive branch, but I also want to at least mention it here because it does relate to the media. Bully pulpit. This is a tool, and it's an informal tool. It's not a formal tool. It's an informal tool used by the President of the United States. What does that mean? The President has the bully pulpit. As President, you get the most publicity. You basically have the media around you 24/7. Because you're the president by default, you're going to have millions of Twitter followers, right? I mean, your social media is going to have a lot of people engaged with it for no other reason that you're the president of the United States. So therefore, because you have control or access to the media, you can use that as a tool to push your agenda. I mean, most people know the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate, but do people really watch a press conference by those folks? Sure, politically active folks. But the average, Joe walking down the street, probably not. I mean, in reality, however, when the president says something, more people will like, oh, okay, what's the president saying? Oh, really? So they can use the media to push their agenda. Let's say there's a member of Congress that is kind of going against their, what the president's trying to do. They're trying to get a policy in place. They're trying to get a law passed. And that member of Congress isn't cooperating. The president can use the media to bully them into getting what they want, right? It's the bully pulpit. Okay, we've gone over everything. Hopefully you can see this whiteboard and my handwriting, it is what it is. If you have any questions on what it is, but I recommend that you be able to draw this from a blank sheet of paper, and it's really not that hard. If you practice it just a couple times, you'll get it. These are our linkage institutions. It's how we link to government. And just before I turn this off, you could possibly get a free response question that gives you a political scenario, right? Something is happening in society? What can you do about it? And that's the overarching theme before I turn this camera off. What can the people do about this issue? They can engage through their interest groups. They can lobby something, right? They can vote for a candidate that will then win the election, that will then pass a law that they agree with, right? They can link to government through their linkage institutions. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, Eagles.